Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, all the way from Redlands, California. We hope that the next hour will be a valuable and informative discussion on professional infographics and how to get started with using them within Business Analyst Online. I'd like to get started with who we are today and who will be presenting. My name is Alex Martinick. I am the Commercial Industry Specialist for Banking and Insurance. I've been with Esri now for 3 years. During my time here, I've worked on our national government team from defense and intelligence through our civilian sciences team, including surveying and natural sciences. And I've been on the commercial team now for a year and a half working with our next presenter, who is my mentor here at Esri. That's Helen Thompson. Helen's been with the company now for 12 years, prior to which she had 10 years of experience within spatial sciences and GIS. And she is Esri's foremost thinker when it comes to infographics and being able to take complex geographic principles and convey them simply to decision makers so that they can make the best informed decisions. What are infographics? Why are they important? We've heard two lines of feedback over the years from our customers in the business space. Traditional business practices rely on cumbersome reports, multi-page reports, 10, 20, 30 pages of raw stats and statistics that convey a lot if you're able to decipher and sort through all the tabular information. On the other side, we have customers that like to convey these principles graphically using maps, using GIS. And this is great, and you can use maps to convey very complex thoughts. However, when you're discussing with business leaders these concepts with maps, they may not have the same geographic understanding as the person producing them. So what we've done is combined both of these. Infographics is a combination of our maps and representations using GIS and the figures you would find in those reports, taking the actionable insights from those tabular documents and representing them with the maps alongside to create a more holistic picture of what's going on in a particular market or neighborhood. This way you can not only give the information, but the context and the cause and effect around the infographics. So with that in mind, I'd like to today turn this over now to our main speaker, Helen, to get us started with the components of building infographics. Helen, it's all yours.
Thank you, Alex, and welcome everybody wherever you're joining from, live or in the recorded session. So before I dig into the actual practice of making infographics, I just wanted to introduce some of the vocabulary. The business analyst infographics are based on templates. So we can think of templates as being a grid very much like what you'd see in Word or PowerPoint. It's a blank canvas in which we can organize it into individual elements. Those elements can be overlaid on top of each other, so we can have both a regular gridded canvas or overlapping in the way that you'd expect with something like InDesign or, as I said, PowerPoint. And the whole idea of this is to provide a structured whiteboard in which we design infographics. And I'm going to assume a little bit of knowledge about infographics and Business Analyst Online as we go through this, but there's enough in here for if you've never used it before, you should be able to quite easily get hold of this session, use the stop and play button afterwards with the recorded session, and work through and do pretty much the same thing that I have done. So what are the individual components that make up infographics? We think about them in a couple of different ways. There are charts, there are tables, there are different types of charts, so bar graphs and line charts, pie charts, right? Ways of communicating in different ways based on the type of information that you want to show. Tables aren't just textual things, but they're actual conditional tables, so I can change the color of the font, I can add images, and I'll show you some of those things. Text isn't simply titles, but it might be information about a site. It could be dynamic information that's coming from the location that you're analyzing, like its name or how far you're analyzing, whether you're using walk times and drive times and rings. And of course, one of the most important things are maps. But how we organize infographics is fundamentally important. So I want to go through a little bit of best practice. Infographics are really reports. There can be more than one page. And what I really focus on and teach people is to think about building a library of the individual elements that you want to combine. So at the bottom of this diagram are the individual charts and tables, maps, infographic panels, text boxes, which come together to form thematic pages. So I build a library of pages. The reason I do this is it gives me the ability to very quickly compile a report based on different things, like in this case, a table, a age profile, an age pyramid. That's in one page. I aggregate that with key facts associated with a map, which is in another page, and I wrap all this up for my site by taking a standard cover page and customizing it for the site that I want to analyze. I can then export that as a dynamic infographic, a PDF, or a set of images, and have it specific to this site. In this case, 122 Cajon Street in Redlands. So let's actually get started and look at how we organize this. So this is my standard desktop with a whole bunch of templates that I'm going to use throughout this recording. I'm going to start in the US, and then I'm going to go and use data in Australia and France. So here we are at Redlands headquarters. It's early for us in California, and I've generated a drive time around this location. It's 15 minutes at the furthest distance, down to a 5-minute drive time around them. And I can simply click on the infographics and start to see information about them. Esri has built a whole range of templates, things like this key facts, which are organized by topics, education, employment, household income. And each one of these is an infographic panel that or an infographics page, as I move around, change the distance or the time, each one of those segments, distance areas, I can see the changes to the demographics. So within 5 minutes, the population is 10,000. At 15 minutes, the population is 311,000. And as I said, Esri has curated many different infographics for the US. And internationally, using our standard data, we provide a summary demographic infographic for everybody. So I can jump between these different infographics. But what I want to do is I want to customize this. This is a great start, but it might not necessarily provide all the information that I want. So I'm going to use the pencil to edit this infographic. And maybe the first thing that I want to do is to change this infographic with employment and start to get more detail about age. But before I do that, what I want to show you is how this was built. It's a standard infographic that Esri created, and each one of these little elements is customizable. What I can do is I could delete this, or I could replace it with my own custom infographic panel. So I'm going to click infographic. Here are a whole range that Esri has built. Things like pet ownership, annual household income, all of these are templates. But if I click on the plus button, I can add my own infographic. And I'm interested in things like healthcare spending. So clicking on each one of these will add the variables into essentially a variable bucket where I can see all the different information. I can click next and start to assemble them. I can change the style of these. I can add different shapes and icons associated with that. So I've configured my search and the different icons to just be associated with medical in this case. But what I want to do is maybe look at people, and well, let's go and look at all the different shapes, whatever it might be. I'm going to choose the heart for the medium age. Let's go in here and jump now to medical and add the plaster for it. So very quickly I've started to build up information. I can add a new title, and we'll say this is healthcare. Let's hit return on this, and now I'm going to save our infographic, give it a title, and now I have a custom infographic that is part of my library of panels. And you can see that I've built a large number of different infographics for different situations and different requirements that I have working in retail, manufacturing, real estate. And I can simply add that new panel to my infographic, and now I have a customized infographic that I can go and save. So now for my key facts, what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this with name. So I've used Esri's key facts, and I've made my own version of it. So I'm going to add my name to it. This will now store it into our library, and you can see it's up here in the top left. So I go back to my maps, click on infographics. We'll be able to run an infographic, and I'm still seeing Esri's key facts, and the reason is that that is set up to be the default template. But you can see under my infographics, here's key facts Helen. I'm going to make that the default, and now I'm going to run it. And now every time when I run an infographic, it's going to use that key facts Helen. And here it is. So I can look at the median age and see, does it increase, decrease at these different times? What's the number of people that have healthcare? And of course, I could go in and add separators for numbers. I could configure this further. One of the great things that I'm able to do is I can change the color and the style. So Business Analyst Online supports this idea of themes. So themes allow us to customize things like the background color, the icons. I can control how charts appears, and I've built a number of different themes. One of my favorites is this mint green one. Another one that I really like and use quite a bit is called blues. So I'm going to apply that theme, and automatically the whole template is updated associated with my theme. And this is a great way to apply corporate styles, whether it's your individual corporate style or maybe for a client that you're working with. So I've created different corporate styles for people that I commonly work with. And one of my tasks associated with healthcare is to look at not just educational attainment, but I need to replace that with some different information. So in this case, what I want to do is add a chart based on age. So here I've organized my age variables, and what I want to look at is just the population associated with age in 5-year increments. So I'm going to select the top one that I need, the bottom one, and take all these variables and drag and drop them onto the template. So now automatically I've got this age chart. I maybe want to do a quick bit of cleanup associated with that. I want to add some grid lines, so I'm going to add a horizontal grid line. I want to take the axis and change the font to 45. Let me change the title here to age distribution. or just simply age, okay? And now the other thing I want to do is I want to change the thickness of the bar graphs. So quite quickly I can create a brand new layout and organizational template, a different setup for that, save it, and it would now be available for me every time I came to this chart. But it's very complex and time-consuming to do this every single time you want to make an infographic. So one of the things that I do is I build a template of infographics. And there's a great feature called Add Panel from another template. And in my infographics, one of the things that I've done is organized and create custom pages with the type of charts that I commonly use. So I'm going to use this age chart. And I have age charts which are organized with different formats and layouts. So things like percentages, which are vertical. I've got 10 pages of designs with 2 designs on each page. So these are my vertical ones with things like comparisons, and these are my horizontal ones. So I'm going to add this one that I typically use, which includes percentages. And so now I've got a different layout with a template already set up with the ways that I want to draw this. And the only thing that I really need to customize because of the small space is use the chart options, look at my horizontal axis, and change this to 45 degrees. But all of my fonts, all of my colors, everything, including titles, are added for me by using that template. So one of the things I would really encourage everyone to do is to think about the common charts and other objects that you're going to use, and then build the different charts and put them in an infographic template page. So let's save this and switch to a different template that I often use. And this is specific to retail analysis. I was asked to perform some analysis for the potential for a hamburger bar here in California. And so I built a custom infographic with it. And it has, pictures. We break down and we have a donut chart, as it's called, to look at the different eating times. What's my fast food spending? How much do people spend in different areas? And I'm using this idea of traffic lights and conditional environments to allow me to look at what the performance is. So I'm just going to cancel out of this, jump to maps, go back in here, and now I'm going to switch my infographic to use that one I just looked at, which is my burger bar potential. So here it is, burger bar image. I'm going to make that the default, and now I'm going to run it. Making it default means that every time I come to analyze the site, I'm always using that same template. So here it is. So we can see that at 5 minutes drive time, this site only rates 0.7. I want to score by combining the spending, the population, the income, daytime population, median age of over 2. And so that my red image tells me that it doesn't meet that potential. Each one of my traffic lights, these color-coded images, is telling me how well it meets our different criteria. And as I go to different distances, we can see how the different food spending and population, bachelor's degrees vary. So how did I build this? Well, it's using exactly the same principles as we looked at before. We have a chart here, and we have a table. And that table contains variables that I've dragged and dropped in exactly the same way. So these are the variable names down the bottom. here's the title for each one, and then I'm using an image with different conditions associated with it. So population, if it's over 30,000, show it in green. If it's under 15,000, show it in red. I can click on this template to customize it. I can see the images, and you can now change or create different conditions associated with these behaviors. So I'm going to change the image from green to use a different image. And again, what I've done is built a library of symbols. So maybe I want to use a blue ball instead. I can click on this, and it will automatically change the color associated with it. So I'm going to cancel out of this again, because I'm happy with how this works. But what I want to do is replace it again with a different panel. And I've built a set of rules and different panels that I use all of the time. And in one of my libraries, I have a whole range of traffic light conditions set up to do this type of retail analysis. So what I'm going to do is to change it from the circles, and I'm going to use an up-down indicator. So I simply add that as part of my style, save it. I can save it with a new name, and that will allow me to come back in and make sure that whatever I do, I don't override my previous template. So where you need to create a new template, it's very simple, just to take the basis of what's been done before, customize it, and keep working on it. So now what I'm going to do when this finishes, creating the template, and there's a lot of different customization in this, so it might take a little while. I'm going to go back in to my maps. I'm going to run Infographics. It's going to show me my original hamburger analysis infographic using the traffic lights, the circles, and now I'm going to look at up-down, and we can see that it's changed the styles from the circles to a different set of images which are using triangles to indicate the status. So very simple ways to do it, using these different libraries and ideas. And I'm going to quickly do a couple of more changes associated with this. So you might have noticed this panel down here. What I've done is I've used a standard chart, very similar to the age and population that we looked at before, and dragged and dropped the data in here. My template is red, which is based on the conditioning associated with each one of these variables. So I've used conditional style to set the color for each one of these, and I can use that in the bar chart. In conditional styling, we can see how they're using green, orange, red based on the condition associated with the indexes that I want to use for my food spending. And I've applied that to the entire chart in this case. But what I've also done is I've used overlays. So there's this idea of free-floating images and panels which I've overlaid on top of my chart. And it's simply 7 transparent lenses, rectangles, with a 3D effect that I overlay on top of the chart. And what that allows me to do is to make it appear that each time I look at one of the variables, this glass container is being filled up by the chart bar behind it. So it's a nice little trick to add 3D effects. In the same way, I've added a hollow ring to my donut, and that gives me a 3D effect. So here's the hollow overlay, here's the original chart. If I undo my move, you can see that this gives me a 3D effect. So overlays are really, really important and a great way of thinking about it. And I'm going to use overlays in a moment to really completely change some of the designs. The other thing I want to show you is how we can build templates using different elements. And so one of the things I often use is I create things like covers. So I have a cover which contains images associated with a location. And I've used overlays in exactly the same way to allow me to put images in. So I'm going to continue to analyze our headquarters. And what I want to do this time is go and look at my campus maps. I'm going to add a photo for where we are here in campus. I'm going to apply that. And now I'm going to add other pages. And I'm going to use some of my library templates to build a multi-page report. So I can add a map summary as one of my next pages. And these are all configured with my current style. So this is what I call a porthole map. I'm going to add another template, which is a page of key information for retail, things like age and population, age and employment. So I can look at the daytime population and people that are around, and I've added that inside. And some of you might be wondering why this doesn't look pretty, and the reason is that these are the default styles. And of course, what I can do is quickly go use my themes. I'm going to use my mint green theme, and I'm apply it, and now all of my different pages will all have a consistent style associated with it because of that theme. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this little text box here, and that's where I've set up a placeholder to use name and address. I'm going to change this to Esri, I'm going to change this to Esri HQ, and I can change the second line to say, let's say it's in Redlands, California. So I simply have a little box that I apply, and now when I save it, I'm going to save it to be specific to this site. So I've used a cover, a map, and my consistent burger information, my retail information, and I'm going to say this is my Esri HQ site report. So now that template isn't a generic template, it's a specific report that I've created to allow me to analyze this location. So now if I go back to my maps, of course that's saved in my template. It's not my default. My default was my burger report. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run my Esri HQ, and it will now compile all of those multiple pages. So I'll have a cover, I'll have the interactive map, and I'll have my retail analytics all compiled into a single report. So here we are with an interactive porthole map where I can look at key facts, population and household profile. I can see how they vary. This is all built using overlay and some custom designs. What I want to do is I want to save that. So I could save it as a PDF for printing. I could save it as images, but I can also save it as a dynamic HTML. And that allows me to share these HTMLs with anybody. I can put them on a server. I can embed them in different reports. So you can see here is the dynamic HTML. This is just running locally at this moment in time on my laptop because I haven't exported it. But it contains all of the information that I had in exactly the same interactive way as the report which was being run inside Business Analyst. So all of the different features are available to me to export data and really build beautiful interactive capabilities that can be shared collaboratively across departments, with your clients, whatever that might be. So I'm going to switch to Australia now. So in exactly the same way, I've created a site and I've built an infographic. And I'm looking at restaurant potential. And this is where a site that I analysed, which is close to where I used to live in Sydney. And you can see we've organised data in different ways for Australia. This is using the Australian data sets from Map Data Services and has very similar information, including things like landlord type and language. So we can see how for this location things change. Look at how many people have more than $4,000 a week of family income. We can look at the average population. It's about 39, 15 minutes away. It's 40 at 5 minutes. It's 39 at 10. I can run these different infographics for the different sites. So interested in an area much closer to the student population in South Sydney. So we can run the same infographic, and you can see a very different age profile. There's almost nobody living in this area with income of more than $4,000 a week compared with Potts Point. What we can do is customize these reports in exactly the same way. So as I previously dragged and dropped different charts and data variables onto my canvas, I could replace, say, this infographic with other information, a different chart. Maybe what I'm interested in is taking the same profile or the same template, but in this case, maybe what I'm interested in is a kindergarten daycare support area. Or maybe I'm interested in employment information. So all these different variables that exist, we can go and look at. So I'm going to grab jobs in this case, click on the show all the different tenures or job types, and here I can see occupation by sex. Maybe what I want to look at is, say, female employment. So I'm going to highlight this group, drag and drop it onto the chart, and we can see how everybody's employed. But one of the things that I need to do is to clean up the titles down the bottom. So what I'm going to do here is simply, go through and get rid of the mapping data services part of this, which is a reference to who supplied us the data, because often data comes from different sources, and we want to make sure that we reference the different data providers and give them appropriate credits associated with providing data. So it's a bit of work to clean this up, but of course if you build a library of this, you only need to do this once. And so as I go through each one of these, cleaning the data up, I'm building something for the first time that I can use again and again, because I can simply copy it from my different templates. So this is all set up. I'm just going to click apply, and here it is, and I'm going to work on it a little more. So one of the ways that I often work on this is that I set up what I call a scratch pad. So rather than breaking some of my existing templates and not really corrupting the things that I've done, I create different styles. So I'm going to call this people in work. I'm going to save this now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that onto this template, but I'm going to open a different template where I've set up different spacings associated with this. So I'm going to bring that infographic and I'm going to start to work on it in a larger space. So I'm going to use copy from panel. It was in people in work. And now what I'm going to do is copy the element that we just looked at, click add to that, and now we can see here it is and how it's organized. I can look at the different elements associated with it, edit the data, edit the different styles associated with this. You can see which ones that I've corrected or need to correct. Let's say just clerical for this, and work through whatever I need to do. And maybe this is better used actually as a horizontal bar chart. So I can play about with the designs. Maybe what I really want to do is actually show this instead as a donut chart. And click on the chart options. Let's add a legend to show me this and add it to the right-hand side. And I'll put it 25% down. And I can even change the font for my legend. And we'll make it bigger. All right, so now what I've been able to do is to really see how this works. But of course, what I can also do is go back and add the original design. And I thought it looked better as a vertical, rather than a vertical, as a horizontal chart. So I'm simply going to now change that layout to be a horizontal bar chart. Clean this up, which is the last one I need to clean up. Let's apply that. And now I can save my scratch pad with two different versions of the same chart side by side. And because this becomes a template, what it means is that I can do exactly the same type of design work and, you know, keep coming back to that template, my scratch pad, where I can experiment with things that I want. I can build a library of different styles. I can then take, for example, all of my different ways that I show female employment, male and female employment, and create a library infographic which is just associated with employment. And that becomes a great way of making sure that when I'm coming to now compile an infographic, it's very simple to bring all these different types of information together. So let's take this people in work infographic, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace a couple of these templates down the bottom. I'm going to delete them. I'm using custom legends as an overlay, so I'm going to delete a couple of these. Click apply. Then I'm just going to merge this together, and let's go in, and also I've got these legends hidden in the background as well. So now what I want to do is add from my template using another panel, go to my scratch pad, and we'll add the donut chart with the legend, which is on the second page of this infographic, to my people in work infographic. So jump to page 2, click add. Now that's automatically added in my current style associated with that. So it's a really quick, simple way to bring these different things together and use graphics from one location, use charts, tables, images, and really bring together whole collections of data. And we can do this anywhere in the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly switch to France for the last 5 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up to questions. And in France, I've done some analysis for one of my favorite restaurants, La Maison de la Truffle in Paris. And associated with this, I built another infographic. And this infographic is looking at the potential for a supermarket. So I'm interested in supplying this infographic with an international team. So I have both an English infographic and a French infographic. And the different pages are using different styles. And I built this in slightly different ways. I mentioned earlier about the grids. So the first page is using grid panels, which are set up in a regular way that you've seen me use throughout most of the session. The second panel is using floating elements that I can dynamically move around the page. So there's no structure to this. I can simply move features around the page. And here is my map element. Here's a set of different elements which are overlaid. And I'm able to add a blank page in this way where I can select the individual layout. So I could add a blank page, and now I can add panels from other templates independent of whether it's a grid or whether it's floating. So I can go in, for example, and add population living alone, move it anywhere on my display, and I can add maybe another thing from the same template. So I often go back to the same template in my library which I've organized, and maybe now what I want to look at is income by type. And I'm going to create an effect with a graphic inside a graphic. So to do this, I'm going to enlarge it, make it big. I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to go into the chart options, look at the donut, reduce the size of the donut hole, click apply. So now we have a big graphic. I'm going to take this and now overlay it in the center. And so I have a chart inside a chart. And I might need to clean this up a little bit. I can do that afterwards. And that's exactly how I've created this component here. And it's very similar to how I've created this porthole map. So this porthole map has been done by overlaying an image on top of a regular map. And if I look at this, what I've done is I've used a whole template with what I call part of my chart backgrounds, and it's a clip. And so I can add this clip on top. If I remove it, you'll see that it's rectangular. I add the clip on the top, and it masks the map background inside, and it happens to have the same color as the design for my map. So I've shown a lot, lots of different designs, lots of different capabilities. And so what I want to do is hand it back over to Alex, and we'll take some of your questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Helen. And to progress further, just a few brief reminders on the 5 tips for better infographics. Design it, then build it. Have the idea ahead of time of what it is that you'd like to create. Work and create that proof before you get into the software itself. Make every infographic reusable. Make sure that you can repurpose as much as possible so you avoid custom development, which can take time. Use overlays and custom elements to improve the design and usability. Choose the best charts to communicate your information, and remove the complexity. And I'd add one that's build with purpose. Have something in mind of what you want to build and what it is you're trying to highlight. So with that, we have a few examples that we will be posting within the email that you'll be receiving tomorrow morning from GoToWebinar. These examples will be there so that you can go and look and be inspired, and feel free to reverse engineer these as you see fit. Also, part of the email that will go out tomorrow is a link to our Esri LinkedIn special interest groups. Find the one that is most applicable to the type of work that you do. And this is, again, your forum, your voice to go in, ask questions, engage with Esri directly. We will be posting this webinar recording and others like it in the coming days. So with that, we'd like to now open it up to questions. Helen, one that I have here from LinkedIn is regarding the capabilities with infographics. Are you able to embed other types of animations in there, GIF files, video files, and if so, what is the best way of doing that?
Yeah, you can embed anything inside an infographic. One of the elements that you saw me use is an image. So images, we support PNGs, SVGs, GIFs, any type of image that will run in an HTML5 page can be embedded. And I use images a lot, both multi-layered, transparent images, and also sometimes dynamic images to give different effects. There's a great library of resources that you can go to. We have a number of standard icons that we use all the time, which are available as SVGs, but you can add your own SVGs. There's a place called the Noun Project, N-O-U-N project, all one word.com, and you sign up as part of that, and it contains a whole bunch of SVGs that you can use to replace the icons in infographics. And then for other forms of animation or complex kind of embeds, when you add a text box to an infographic, you can write your own custom HTML inside. So if you're an HTML whiz, you know how to use iframes or do some custom embed, then a standard text box is a great way to add that. And both Alex and I have added things like custom forms and a whole range of different things into these infographics.
Wonderful. Now, the second question then is kind of along the same lines. For live data feeds or to have infographics that you host separately, can you have them configured to dynamically update with live content? For a retail example, potential sales data or ROI?
Yes. One of the things I didn't show in this webinar is the fact that Business Analyst Online supports the ability for you to use your own custom data sources. So very common practice is to use ArcGIS Online and our standard geographies or your own custom geographies to create your own map layer, which is the source of the chart data that we use for the infographics. So, for example, you might want to have regional sales data or sales data for particular stores or market potential. So you would create that in a map layer which you host in ArcGIS Online, and then you connect what's called a custom data source to Business Analyst Online. As that map is updated, the charts and the tables and everything that you use, including things like conditions, will be updated as the data changes. So it's as live as your original data source.
Wonderful. So then a key business executive or decision maker can have this bookmarked and every morning come in to see what the performance is for various stores. It'll update as long as the intervals of the data feed refresh with the infographic.
Yeah, and one of the ways that we've seen people use it is to set up, say, for key regions. So I was working recently with a retailer who was interested in comparing the performance in California with Florida, and we built a specific infographic that just looked at those states. They ran side by side. They could jump between them, and the data was live. And rather than having to have a complex dashboard, they were simply able to bring that that infographic up every day and see how things were changing.
Oh, wonderful. Those are the questions that we've had come in. If for any reason you have additional questions after this webinar, if you'd like to ask, feel free again to join our Esri special interest groups. This is your forum that if you'd like to reach out to us, post your questions here and Helen and I are happy to answer. We will leave this up for a few more moments as people start to log off. We thank you for joining us today. We will be sending out the email tomorrow morning with a list of these SIGs. And we look forward to working with you in the future and seeing the great work that you do with infographics. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.